Jerry Schiffelbein. I am currently a homicide detective. I've been in law enforcement for 24 and a half years, been working homicide for just shy of 11 years.
Awesome. So how did you first become interested?
In law enforcement or?
I would say both. So how did you first become interested in law enforcement and then your specifics?
So I, as a kid, had no idea what I would do with my life. Initially had planned on joining the military out of high school. Couldn't pass the physical because I have a injury that I have a plate and 3 metal screws in my elbow. That was back then was an automatic disqualifier for the military. So then I kind of took a bunch of general ed classes in college, didn't know what to do, and then I went on a ride along, and it was basically an episode of Cops. We got into vehicle pursuits, a foot pursuit. I mean, it was a crazy night, and the next day I'm standing up to college, enrolling in a bunch of criminal justice courses. And it kind of took off from there. Started working in a correctional facility for about 6 months, went to a police department I was there just shy of 10 years before I came to Colorado Springs, where I've been for the last 14 and a half. Homicide, that was kind of another, never expected to go that route. Most people that I know that got in this line of work, law enforcement in general, in some form or fashion to help people to make a difference. For me, I never really got fulfillment out of working traffic accidents, writing traffic tickets. Homicide, I get that. You walk with these families from perhaps the worst moment of their life, where you're delivering the news that their loved one has been the victim of a violent crime. And they're obviously devastated. You walk with them along the way. You get them answers to, most of the time we get them answers to what happened to their loved one, who's responsible for it. We walk with them through the core process. I still get Christmas cards from some of my victims' families. I have a little boy that was 5. We worked a case that he witnessed his mother be murdered. He still comes and sees us every year around Christmas. So I have that fulfillment. It's some long hours sometimes, but just that fulfillment and satisfaction is kind of what got me into homicide and keeps me going. There's really, education is different department to department. I would tell anybody that's interested in law enforcement, get your degree, get your bachelor's degree. I highly recommend in something other than criminal justice, just because you don't know where your career is going to lead. For me, I wish at this point in time, being in homicide, I had a degree in a hard science, just because it opens up a lot more avenues for you as far as some of the crime scene certifications and bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting incident reconstruction. With those hard science degrees, it's easier to get some of those certifications. They're trending in that direction. But then every agency is different. I know here you have to have 60 college credit hours, but I tell everybody, I beg you to get a degree, do it now. I think started 3 or 4 times now trying to go back and finish it up. It's just hard when you're working a full-time job. Get it, and I tell everybody, you're interested in criminal justice, get that degree, maybe a minor, but get it in something else. Another good one's English. You learn how to write. You can get a lot accomplished in this line of work by being able to write effectively. You have to be empathetic. You have to have compassion. You have to be willing to, you're going to deal with some people, some environments that you can't even fathom what or how they've gotten in the position they're in. You can't be too judgmental. You have to treat the people just like they're part of your family. Work with them, be compassionate, be empathetic. Those are the main ones. Patience. I think I joke with my wife, I use all my patience at work because I have no patience at home, but you have to be a patient person just to be able to accomplish what you need to. So I know here, again, this is one that's across the country varies significantly. I know in Colorado Springs, the starting salary is right around $28 an hour for a recruit level officer in the academy. For me, I'm currently I think it's just below or just above $43 an hour, so pretty substantial growth, and you'll grow that much within the first, it's like 3.5 years. You'll make that basically $15 an hour pay raise. Every department gets a little different when it comes to detective rank. So here, detective rank isn't a promotion. I could today be tapped on the shoulder and I'm back out on the street in uniform helping out. It's not any sort of promotion. Every department's a little bit different there. My old department, it was a pay raise, and then it was a promotion that came with, I think it was a 5% pay increase. But there is growth, there is room for promotion, options. Other jobs, what's great about law enforcement, if you get into a job and after 2 years you don't like it, that specific job, there's tons of other jobs you can do. You can go, ride a bicycle every day. You can go ride a motorcycle. You can go, work traffic accidents. There's so much to do within this one career field. So work environment, it's funny, when I was initially in college, I thought I wanted to be a business major when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And then I worked in a bank and decided I can't sit behind a desk all day. I sit behind a desk a lot now, but it's different. What I like about it, you never know what you're going to get from day to day. Every day the job's different, it changes. I could be behind a desk working on a report, and next thing I know I'm in the field for the next 2 days, just running all over the place, doing interviews, that type of stuff. So it changes every day. There's not a typical day in law enforcement overall, or in as a detective. There's not a typical day. Environment, I work in a lot of small teams. So like my team is myself and 4 other detectives that work on the team. But even that intermixes. If somebody needs vacations, we cover for each other, and help each other out a lot. But there's a lot of teamwork. You have to be willing to, at times, make sacrifices for the betterment of the team, to help everybody accomplish that goal at the end. But like I said, there's not a typical day. It changes every single day, which is what's awesome about it. Environment, we still, even as a detective, we go into some dangerous situations sometimes. We're dealing with, especially me, I've sat in those interview rooms interviewing people that have killed multiple people. You're in those rooms talking to them, in a very close environment. We're going to, houses, knocking on doors for, people we don't know if they're witnesses, we don't know if they're suspects. So you still have some of those dangerous environments, some of the hazards with, when during COVID, we're still on the front lines, we're still out there making contacting people. We weren't able to stay at home, we're still out doing our job. So there's some of those hazards, what people commonly think of, but there's some of that other stuff too. Hours depends greatly. So generally speaking, most police departments work 4 10-hour shifts. So you have 4 10s, and then your days off may rotate throughout that. In homicide, our schedule is a little complicated to explain. Perfect world, a 40-hour week. It's never the perfect world. I've worked as many as, I think the most I've ever worked was 90 some hours in a week. So we work a lot of overtime. I know I did the math. Last year, I basically worked 5.5 extra months last year because of all the overtime that came with the job. Patrol, as a patrol officer, is a little bit more, your schedule's a little bit more consistent. You're not on call, I'm on call. Once every 3 weeks, I'm on call, can get called out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And sometimes those call outs last days at a time, where you're taking cat naps in a car or sleeping under a desk for a few minutes just to get a few minutes of sleep in. So the schedule's pretty flexible. It can go all over the place. As a detective, there's a bunch of different roles you can have. I'll talk specifically about a homicide detective. There's a lot of different roles you can have. Typical stuff, lots of reports. You will write lots of reports. That's why I tell people that are interested in homicide investigation specifically, but any investigation, learn to write, because you are writing reports, and when you write reports and you're testifying to them later in court, having a well-written report gets you a long ways with judges, with juries, with attorneys. It means a lot when somebody can read your report and it makes sense. Being able to, a lot of what we do is kind of complicated, but being able to, for lack of a better term, dumb that down to normal people speak. So typical stuff, a lot of report writing, lots and lots of interviews. You will talk to a lot of people, not always suspects, witnesses. That's kind of the general duty. When it comes to like crime scene processing type stuff, you'll get the training. You'll figure that out. People will teach you how to do that down the line. That's not an everyday occurrence. You may have some small scene processing potentially every day, but not significant. You're not going to be out processing homicide scene every day, hopefully. I guess it depends on where you work at, but mainly report writing interviews. That's something that's probably taking place every day. So those interviews can be in person, over the phone, in a correctional environment, in a hospital. You'll go all over the place to do those. Sometimes the challenges the hours. The hours can sometimes get long. It's a challenge on the home life at times, just those crazy hours. Throughout the career, you'll work holidays. You sometimes, when you're planning days off, or when you do like a shift pick where you figure out for like a certain 3 months what your days off are, you pick random days off in the middle of the week because that happens to be when a birthday falls or Christmas falls or something like that. So you learn to adjust that. Just the hours, the work schedule. I'm fortunate my wife used to be an officer, so she understands the work schedule. Some families don't, and it's an adjustment because you're not off every weekend, you're not home every night. You may have plans. You may be working a day shift and have plans to go out with friends that evening, and you get held over, and now you're not. The plans are canceled. Those are pretty common challenges. The benefits, it's during COVID when some people didn't know where the next paycheck was going to come from. Law enforcement, you didn't have that. I have a brother that works in retail, makes very good money, but one day he was on his way to work and got a phone call, hey, we've eliminated your position and every position across the entire chain. We'll pay you for 2 months if you don't have a job anymore. I will never run into that. So there's some benefits there. As I said, the job fulfillment, that's what keeps you going. If you can remember through all the ickiness you see, the crazy schedules, you thought you had a day off, now you don't. If you could remember the impact that you have on a community, on families, that'll keep you going. It can be. I mean, you have to. You have to be willing to make some sacrifices, but you can make it work. I mean, again, every agency's different. We have shift picks here where you can pick basically 1 of 5 shifts to work every year. Every November, you do shift picks for the next year. So you can bounce around. If this year a day shift works better for you, you could probably get a day shift. If next year, because the families have midnight shift works better, go to midnight shift. You have some flexibility there. You can make it work. It's just people have to understand some of the sacrifices. You may get held over last minute. You may get called in on a day off. You may have to make some sacrifices. But then, as police departments, I've been doing this for 24 and a half years. When I started in 1997, it was basically suck it up. If now departments have grown and we will take care of employees. If it's your anniversary, we're going to get you out of there on time. Absent some catastrophe happening, you're going to be home probably early. Most of the supervisors I know will get you out the door early to go home so you can, because your family's important. Employee wellness is a much bigger thing than it used to be. It used to be just suck it up. You will see some stuff. The PTSD is real, but we do much better as a profession as a whole, keeping taking care of our employees, getting them people to talk to, taking care of their families are included in that. Children are included in that. I know officers that have been involved in stuff that we've had that impacted their kids more than it impacted them. We have the resources set up to help the children too. So it can be family friendly to a point. I mean, it's not your perfect Monday through Friday 8 to 5 job. It's not that, but there are some benefits in there. For me, what I do now, it's just kind of what I said earlier. It's the impact. So we have specific roles within the unit. So one of the roles on a homicide investigation is the victim detective. People always think that would be the worst. When I say it's the worst, just autopsies, and autopsies isn't a big deal to me. It's you're the one that gets to go knock on the door and tell mom and dad that their son, daughter, whoever has been the victim of a crime, and they're deceased. That is the worst part of my job. The emotions, the toll. I mean, that part's rough. But what I like the most satisfaction is just walking with them. Like I said, I've cried with them. I've let them yell at me just to get it off their chest, or rather than yell at me than each other. But then getting them through the court process, getting the person that committed the crime convicted, and seeing. I used to say give the families closure. We never give them closure. We give them answers. I think is a better way to look at it. But being able to tell them what happened, and this is the person that did it, and that person is never going to be able to hurt somebody else on the streets again. That's what keeps me going. That's what those 5.5 extra months I worked last year. Every hour was worth it for even one victim's family. That's what keeps me going. I think that's a pretty big question, law enforcement in general. I think technology is going to change it a lot. I think that, my personal opinion, some of the things from recent events, some of the stuff that is going forward is beneficial. I think will help the career. Homicide specifically, technology and training is a big thing. The DNA is such a big thing. It's so much more sensitive now than it used to be. Like, we used to have a pretty crazy amount of DNA to do anything with. Now we have, very, very small amounts. I know there's one company that has instruments that they can get full DNA profiles off of 2 cells, which is amazing. So I think the technology is going to take it places. We also, as time goes on, we're learning more about things we thought were correct 20 years ago aren't correct. Bite evidence, trace fiber, hair type of stuff. It's not what we used to think it was, so we're learning more. So I just think as technology advances, the job's going to advance too, which comes back to the original, like the education type, the sciences, because there are people, it used to be, to become an expert in a certain area wasn't difficult. And we had people testifying in court as experts that shouldn't have been experts, and some of their information was incorrect. It led to people being wrongfully convicted. So there's a trend we're trying to fix that now, instead of just little officer that went to a 40-hour training class, now they're an expert. We're fixing that. Unfortunately, it's too late for these people that have been wrongfully convicted, but it's trying to fix some of that going forward. So mainly technology, advancements, that type of stuff. I guess the biggest advice, I started off as a young, dumb 21-year-old kid. I knew nothing. I was naive about the world, I think. I grew up, I was a farm kid. My graduating class was, I think, 42 people. So I was a young, naive kid. Advice, get your degree. Just be open-minded, go out and experience, go places, experience things, learn to talk to people. that was the hardest part I had when I say as a young 21-year-old kid, I literally started the day after my 21st birthday. I didn't know how to talk to people. I'm glad I started in a jail because I talked with people in a controlled environment, and I quickly learned just treat everybody normal. If they screw up, call them on it, but treat everybody like you would your brother or your sister until they do. Treat them with respect till they do something to lose it. And even then, don't be a jerk about it. But I think that's the biggest advice that actually I learned from a hardcore gang member inmate that me and him got along great. He pulled me aside one day and laid it out, for me. It's like, that makes more sense, and my career's been a lot better since then. Get your degree. It's a great job. There's a lot of negativity out there about law enforcement right now. As I tell officers or people that are still interested in the profession, be the change. There are definitely things in law enforcement that need to change. Be part of that change. Come, join a police department, get into law enforcement, and be the person that you wish officers would be. Be that compassionate, empathetic, respectful officer. And that one officer having that one impact every day in the community can make a huge change in your community and the world. Just that one officer, because you're interacting with probably 20 to 30 people a day. And that circle of influence expands pretty quickly when you're doing that every day of your job.